legacies left by black heroes and sheroes whose shoulders we all stand on. You know their names if I would call them off. People like Shirley Chisholm. People like Martin Luther King Jr. People like John Lewis and Elijah Cummings and so many more. Countless sung and unsung black Americans who contributed to the nation's progress. From the Revolutionary War to the fight against COVID-19 and everything in between. But right now, black history is under attack. And when black history is under attack, American history is under attack. You see, when I think about how critical this is, and the full complexity of our nation's past, present, and future, to deny black history from being taught is to deny our children the education they deserve. And indeed, education is a civil right, and it is the key to a prosperous nation. Let me just ask you, in this diverse audience, should not our children know about Kizzy Corbett as this nation deals with COVID-19? Should not our nation, as we talk about economics and growth and workforce, should they not know about a Sheila Johnson, an investor in real lifetime, someone who buys hotels and sports franchises? Should they not know about Robert Smith, who in 2019 paid the tuition of every student at an HBCU, Morehouse College? And should not they know, as we stand on these grounds and look at a building that slaves built, that a black man from New York named Hakeem Jeffries is the first black man to serve as a leader in this nation for any part? You'll see where I'm going. That's American history, and our children should know. We should tell the truth about black history. So much more I could say, but it's more important for you to hear from the other sponsors of this legislation. And so now it gives me great honor and pleasure to tell you that before he speaks, I know last is going to be our chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, but you know, I just have to say this. Somebody else may call him up to speak, but he is a part of a history. And I want our children to know that this brother chairs the largest caucus in the nation. This brother grew up and found his way to be in the state houses of Nevada, in the Senate of Nevada, leading other people, many much older than he. Should not our young brothers and sisters have that hope? Well, they can if you tell the truth. They can if we put this in our books. And we have done that because black members of the CBC, that's our power and that's our message. And without further ado, this brother is so bad he's been here twice. He's chaired the Congressional Black Caucus. He has been a fighter when you talk about the NAACP. And on a very serious note, he's someone I look up to. He's someone that I look across from where we sit on the United States House floor. And I asked him for the signal. That means when I don't know what's in the bill, I go to the Ifume. And he leans over and he tells me, should that not be a part of telling the truth of how we learn and we grow? Come on up here, my friend, my colleague, my brother from Maryland.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you very much for your kind and gracious remarks and for reading them just the way I wrote them. I appreciate you, and obviously I appreciate your friendship and your leadership as I do with all of the members of the caucus who are here. This was Joyce's idea to get Jamal and myself and her to sort of pull together people around this common theme, since we all have bills and legislation and resolutions aimed at doing that. So let me state some of the obvious. We are here to discuss efforts to preserve and to protect the history of African ancestor Americans. And in doing so, we're also called to be mindful of the fact that even before this republic was born, it compromised the moral principles and the moral claims articulated in the Declaration of Independence and in the preamble to the Constitution and in all the other pronouncements that were issued to justify its revolution against tyranny. By having subjected human beings, our ancestors, to a bondage of the flesh as well as the bondage of the spirit. Everything that the founding fathers claimed then in the name of morality, they contradicted in their attitudes towards and in their treatment of the descendants of Africa and the native inhabitants of this land. The enslavement of the Negro, the extermination of the Hispanic, and the wiping out of Native Americans made the birth of the American nation an iniquitous conception, conceived in hypocrisy and dedicated to the twisted proposition that white men were superior to non-white men and therefore entitled to enslave them, oppress them, and if necessary, destroy them. And so my legislation, like the others who are here today presenting this, seeks to correct that. And those efforts create, in this instance, a 12-member National Council on African American History and Culture, and charges that council to direct the National Endowment on the Humanities to work to preserve Black history as we know it. And so, for a race of people who have suffered, endured, and survived 2 centuries of slavery, oppression, deprivation, degradation, denial, and disprivilege, these efforts have weight, they have purpose, they have meaning, and we are all glad to be here together to usher them in once again. Thank you very much, and I want to, if I might, bring forth Jamal Bowman, who I always call JB, the best and the brightest of New York, a real fighter and a real friend to address you. Jamal, come right on.
Woo! Peace and love, everyone. How y'all doing?
Great.
How y'all doing?
Great.
Everybody good?
Yes, sir.
So thank you all so much for being here. I'm smiling because I'm standing here in love and joy with my colleagues in the House to protect and preserve Black history, to protect and preserve love for Black people, and by the way, love for all history and love for all people. Because Black history is American history, and American history encompasses the history of everyone. And I want to speak directly to the Republican Party. I'm smiling on them as well because some of the things they say and do, you got to laugh to keep from punching somebody in the face or to keep from crying. The Republican Party and Ron DeSantis, do me a favor. Pick up a book and read a book. Read a couple of books. Read an African American history curriculum so that you can understand that the birth of European history started on a continent in Africa. And we know that you are trying to erase that history because you don't want Black people to have knowledge of self. You want to keep us dumb, deaf, and blind so that you can oppress, suppress, and control us. But guess what, DeSantis and Republican Party? It ain't happening. We ain't going back to slavery, when it was illegal for us to learn how to read and write. And when we tried to learn how to read and write, you chased us, raped us, and lynched us. We're not going back to slavery, Ron DeSantis. We ain't going back to Jim Crow. We ain't going back. This isn't Make America Great Again to be the kind of America you wanted it to be. We are standing here enlightened, empowered, and we are woke as hell.
Woo! Yes, sir.
So you can try to continue with your anti-woke agenda, but the only people who ain't woke is you. You on the House floor today trying to kick my sister Ilhan Omar off the Foreign Affairs Committee, the first African refugee to be elected to Congress, speaking truth to power and uplifting our entire nation by holding us accountable to our ideals as a nation. You are scared of that truth. That's why you continue to live a lie. On the House floor today, you are equating socialism with communism and dictatorship. That's not even what socialism is. But if y'all read books, you would know the difference. You would know that before we came to this country, we were kings and queens, never porch monkeys. There were empires in Africa called Kush, Timbuktu, where every race came to get books to learn from black teachers who taught Greeks and Romans, Asian Arabs, and gave them gold. When gold was converted to money, it all changed. Money then became empowerment for Europeans. And you're still using that money to oppress us under the thumb of plantation capitalism. We know your game, and we're calling your game out. And that's why we're not introducing 1 bill, but 3. And my bill, the African American History Act, is a bill we are going to push hard through the House. And we have a Senate co-lead, Senator Cory Booker. Thank you to my brother over there. And I'm so happy to be joined by other members of the House who are not members of the CBC, who are speaking with us on this very important issue. So, Republican Party, Ron DeSantis, read a damn book or two, and you won't be scared of knowledge. Knowledge is power. It uplifts humanity. When we have more knowledge, we make better decisions. And then we can solve humanity's most pressing issues like hunger and climate change and homelessness and poverty and all the stuff you don't want us to solve because you just want to remain in power. Stop lying, read a book, and you are never, ever, ever going to take us back to slavery and Jim Crow, and
Yes,
you
sir.
are never going to kill us. We don't die, we multiply.
Yes, sir.
Get up out of here with your nonsense. And it is my honor to introduce the chairman of the CBC, my brother Stephen Horsford. Thank you so much.
It's hard to follow such powerful words, but I'm proud to join my colleagues, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, Congressman Jamal Bowman, and Congressman Kwasi Mpume in kicking off Black History Month with these important legislative introductions. Their bills, the Black History is American History Act, the African American History Act, and the National Council on African American History and Culture Act, couldn't come at a better and more important time. We know that our history is under attack, but we will fight every day to protect the right for our children and all of America's children to learn about the true history of the Black American experience. We're proud of Black excellence. We're proud of the contributions Black leaders have made to making this country what it is today. But for the sake of politics, our teachers and educators are being censored. So today, the Congressional Black Caucus stands with our colleagues, and we will not stand idly by. We join you in this effort. We commend you on your leadership, and we will ensure that the full history is taught and that will include Black history and all history. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you all so much, and it is my honor to introduce Representative Frankel to come up and say a few words. Thank you so much for standing with the CBC and caring about this issue. Thank you.
Well, it's a little cold for me. I'm from Florida, but that's why I'm here. Thank you. When I saw these shorter people, don't be afraid to zoom in. It's a tragedy what's occurring in the state of Florida, and I'm not even reading it. What's going on there is a governor who is purging thinkers from our colleges that he does not agree with, purging school board members from school boards that he does not agree with, banning books, even math books, and even in our schools now, if a book hasn't been approved by his board of education, they have to put wrapping paper over the books. And of course, he is banned Black history being taught. So I want to say, and Joyce, you mentioned children having to know the truth. Probably, I would say one of the most emotional moments of my life was going to African American country. And what you know, and I wish every child in America, and especially in Florida, could get that opportunity. Yes, you know what? Sometimes the truth hurts. The truth hurts. And that helps you not to think that. But it also could be helpful for anybody to see what you can do. Whether it's a Shirley Chisholm or a Jackie Robinson. The truth is part of our history. So thank you again to all of you.
We also have Michigan in the house. It's my honor to introduce Representative Rashida Tlaib.
Thank you so much. Thank you to my incredible, I almost say big brother, Congressman Bowman for continuing to speak truth, and so many of my colleagues up here, and of course Senator Booker for championing this. I hope he reads it good. You know, one of the things that is really important, you know, I grew up in the most beautiful blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit, and every corner is a reminder of Black history. And I just cannot imagine not being able to experience these legendary, you know, moments that have changed our country for the better. And, you know, I watch my colleagues over and over again quote these folks in our history. I don't even like, it's our history, over and over again. But they sit by idly, allowing someone to say, we're going to go ahead and erase our Black neighbors within our history. You know, in Detroit, we say, tell the truth, always. We say, what do we say? The truth will set us free, all the time. And it is going to set us free continually if we continue to, again, make sure we elevate and speak that truth. You know, across the country, we see the radical right-wing politicians like the person in Florida attempting to whitewash American history and ban African American history from being taught in our classrooms. You know, you could call it dumb, you can call it racism, you can call it whatever, but it is un-American. This is really, truly unmasking white supremacy at its core. You cannot teach the truth about American history, y'all, without African American history. The kind of censorship and book banning should be alarming to all of us, especially as we fight for more inclusive, multiracial democracy that includes all of us, all our voices, that we're truly seen and heard at all levels of government. The truth must also be taught and should inspire us all to continue to march for freedom, equity, and justice for all in the spirit of civil rights leaders who came before us. Our children must learn the role of systematic racism in our country and our history, and how it continues to impact our communities right now. It is critical that we speak truth, because we cannot speak that truth and understand what we need to do in these chambers without understanding enslavement, segregation, redlining in our communities that continues to happen, We cannot make meaningful change that uplifts our whole country if we don't understand that history and are not taught that history. So we will not allow, I know I won't, allow to erase Black history or my Black neighbors, the powerful legacy of many of my neighbors and the civil rights warriors that came before us. We cannot learn from our past if our past is no longer being taught in our education systems. So I just really applaud my colleagues to continue doing this. But I want folks that are listening to this, don't just rely on us. I've learned over and over again the way to really push back against this type of hate and othering that folks again are using because they got nothing else to talk about. They got nothing else to actually, things that are constructive to do, but to increase fear and hate. Is this transformative change happens in the streets when we demand it. So folks in Florida, rise up. Don't sit back and say this is not something I agree with. Do something about it. Speak up. I think again, sometimes people like us may not be heard and seen the same way that you may be seen and heard when you speak up. This is not the time to sit idly by silent while your governor continues to spew hate. And this is truly what it is. When you say, let us erase a whole people within our history books. With that, I thank you again so much for the incredible leadership of our country.
We want to thank everyone for coming, and let me say thank you to all of our colleagues who joined us today. And Jamal, thank you for reminding us that knowledge is power. But I was also told knowledge is power, but knowledge is knowing where knowledge is found. And for us, we find it in our culture, in our history, in Black history, which is American history. Thank you. We'll take a few questions. I think that we've said it all.
One more statement. The College Board should be ashamed of itself.
Yes.
The College Board has lost all credibility when it's listening to a far right-wing white supremacist in determining what goes into its curriculum. The College Board should be ashamed of itself.
Let me just say thank you for that, and for those who may not know, to have a college board that would want to dictate or say that you could only read very conservative reading is very frightening to us. So as we continue to push this legislation, we will continue to push books, authors, Black leaders that we want our communities to know about. So today I'm going to say to all the members of the CBC and all the members of Congress joining us, when you go back to your districts, let's put our list together of what we want, not just Black children, that we want all children to learn about. We are no longer in a community where everybody is all segregated. We fought hard to be integrated. I think about Rosa Parks and what it took us from 1955 to get to the civil rights movement. We fought too hard to go backwards. And this is taking away the knowledge of all of our children. I'm the first to tell you that I believe in diversity, inclusion, and equity. We want our children to know our history because we are living history. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you all so much.
Just zoom out. Like zoom all the way out. And once it's done there, you can decide.
Oh yeah.